everybody. This is Dr. Leslie Blevins with Enilda Clinic at enildaclinic.com, and I have a super special guest here today, Stephanie. She is one of my good friends. I think I've known Stephanie since middle school. Is that right? Is that when we met? Okay. So forever. We've known each other for a super long time, and we keep in touch. She lives in Alabama. That's where I grew up, is Alabama. And I live in Washington, for anybody who's not in the Spokane area who might be watching this video. And Stephanie is amazing. She is a homeschool mom of 4 children. They span currently from, I guess, kindergarten. Is that your 6-year-old kindergarten? All the way up through high school. And she has an amazing background. I've talked to her many times about her homeschool experience, and I'm always impressed. Always. And so I asked her if she would let me interview her, because we're going through this, forced homeschooling experience with parents, and there's a lot of different stressors. But I was also noticing from some of her comments that it's a different experience for homeschool parents as well. And so I thought maybe we could get some insights from Stephanie, and she could also just kind of share the broader picture from homeschool parents who were doing this during normal times and how it's changing for them. And maybe it'll give everybody a bigger sense of perspective and comfort. And maybe she'll have some ideas for us too. All right, Stephanie, can you tell us, one, thank you for doing this. I super appreciate it. But can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because I know you're more than just a homeschool mom, right? Although all homeschool moms are superheroes, all moms are, but you also have professional training and teaching too. Can you tell us some of your background that facilitates you doing homeschooling?
Sure. So in 2008, I graduated with double major in secondary education and social studies. I never taught full time, but I did a lot of substitute teaching, did a long-term sub job, and I think I learned a lot about teaching and children in general just from doing substitute teaching, because it's a little different than teaching in your own classroom. I started doing homeschool with my daughter when she was in preschool, just a few days a week, very casually. And then when she was getting ready for kindergarten, we decided to give homeschooling a try. So we've been doing it ever since. So I've been homeschooling for 12 years. And as you mentioned, I have 4 children. I have a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And over the years, we've done a lot of different things. I've helped with our co-op, teaching classes there, everything from middle school history classes all the way down to preschool classes. I've helped to develop some of our classes for co-op and plan those out. I do the standardized testing for our co-op now. And I'm also a mentor and on the board of our robotics team. So we stay pretty involved with those activities. So I'm still kind of staying, I guess you could say, staying up to date on education in that way of teaching other people. So that's my background in education.
I'm always so impressed whenever you tell me all that stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, some questions I have right off the bat. What is a co-op?
Okay, co-op is a group of homeschool parents that are part of a cooperative. So we join together under a legal covering, and there are certain requirements that we have. Different co-ops have different requirements, but we meet once a week, and we have all different kinds of classes. We have just regular core classes like social studies, science with labs. We have writing classes, and then we have extracurricular activities too. So they have archery, and they have music classes, and like just character development classes. There are art classes, different things that the kids can do together as a group. So they're sort of in a classroom setting during that time, and they're under another teacher. And so there are a lot of benefits to that. And then also under our covering, we have field trips, school dances, socials, and things like that that the kids can do together. So it's sort of like being a part of a school, but it's not every day. It's just once a week, and a few days extra with the extracurriculars.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept because I think people who aren't involved in traditional homeschooling might not realize that co-ops are, in my experience, I've worked with a lot of parents who homeschool. Co-ops are usually very much a part of it. And in our conversation, I think that the co-op support is a huge difference between the crisis homeschooling we're seeing now versus traditional homeschooling is that there's no infrastructure there as far as a co-op to give support.
Absolutely. I've found over the years that the homeschool network is very supportive. I don't know if it's unique or if it's just because maybe sometimes you feel isolated as homeschoolers. And so personally, like I wouldn't want another homeschool mom to feel isolated. So I would be very motivated to help support her and encourage her if she needed help. But yeah, it's been really good to have that support network. And we have missed that since everything has stopped. So our co-op has had to stop meeting, and so there has been a sense of where you've been a little bit isolated or cut off from that normal support group that you have.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So tell us, before we dive into the changes that have happened during the pandemic, tell us, you've already mentioned a little bit, but dive a little bit deeper into what happens on the, I mean, I guess maybe you do homeschool 5 days a week, but maybe you don't, I don't know. What does homeschool look like whenever you're not at co-op?
Okay. So yes, homeschool is usually 5 days a week.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to be asking dumb questions.
No, it's okay. I mean, we are required to do 180 days of instructional days a year.
That's the same as a public school.
Right. It's the same as a public school, but we don't have like times that we have to do it. So we could homeschool year round, and we typically do homeschool year round, and we'll take breaks all throughout the year. So usually in the spring, because we are from South Alabama, it gets really hot here in the summertime. So we'll usually take our breaks in the spring and then do schoolwork in the summertime when it's extremely hot and humid and nobody wants to be outside anyways. So this is kind of typically the time that we would take a little bit of a break from school. But because, like I said, I'm not going to get into how things have changed yet. I'm not going to do it, but I will in a minute. But anyways, so yes, we would be doing school at least 5 days a week, sometimes 6, if I can push them to get some things done. So, but yeah, 5 days a week of just our regular core classes. And then we had our co-op once a week. And we also met for spring robotics. And in the fall, we have fall robotics, which is more hectic. But in the spring, what we were doing is just 1 day a week. And then my kids are also in Taekwondo. So they go to Taekwondo class twice a week. And so we were out of the house 3 or 4 days a week doing extracurricular activities before all of this started.
I have a question.
Yeah.
With extracurriculars, so most families I know, their extracurriculars are happening after 3 p.m., let's say?
Yes.
With you guys, is it the same thing?
No. So we have a homeschool Taekwondo class that meets twice a week, and the classes have been split up, according to their rank. I won't get into all those specifics. But so we're out of the house a couple days a week during the school day. So we'll get up, we'll do school for a couple hours, then we'll go to Taekwondo class for a couple of hours, by the time we drive there, take class and come back. And then, we'll have lunch and then we're back to school again. So on those kinds of days, we may be doing school past 3 o'clock. We may, have to do school till 4 or 5 o'clock, just depending on how things go. And yeah, for robotics, we would meet at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon for several hours. So yes, a lot of our extracurriculars are during the day.
I really like that flexibility in your schedule. Do you find that having those smaller blocks of just 2 hours And I guess I don't know. I've seen pictures on your social media where your kids are sitting at the table. So I'm assuming that there's table work, right?
Absolutely. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do think that it's good to work almost in blocks. So they will typically get up and do a couple hours of schoolwork and then take a break of some kind. If we were under the normal circumstances, like I said, going for a couple hours and then back home, eat, and then get back to work again. There's a lot of flexibility in homeschooling as to when you're doing things. And you kind of just learn to go with the flow, because when you are at home, obviously there are lots of variables that are outside of your control if you're not in a school environment, like in a classroom environment. And so you learn to just roll with that. And if you have multiple children, like for example, my sixth grader may be, just trucking along, doing a great job, super focused on his work, and then one of the younger kids gets hurt. And so then, there's crying, I'm having to go and help them. So he's distracted. And so we have to learn to regroup, take a break and regroup and come back at a later time. Just making sure that you stay on top of getting those things done, but being flexible in how you get them done is something that I've just learned over the years. But yes, having those breaks throughout the day is good for us.
Do you think maybe you've learned to plan for those events so your flexibility accounts for this?
Yes. um, yes, I have learned that. So let's just say, for example, if they have worksheets that they need to do, they have a lesson. We do distance learning, so they're watching a lesson like this on a computer screen, and then they'll have their assignment. And then something like that was to happen or come up, or technology issues or whatever, I have learned to plan like a second line of defense or a third line of defense, the backup option, so that I can say, okay, well, you can't do plan A right now, but you can take this tablet and you can play the game Teach Your Monster to Read, or you can do Times Tales Math, or, some kind of a learning app, so that there's still some instructional time that's going on, and basically the whole plan just doesn't fall apart. So, yeah, I think I've learned how to deal with those unexpected events.
I love that you say like there are 3 walls. You don't just have a plan B, you also have a plan C.
You kind of have to. I mean, I don't know if it's having more than one child or what that creates that, but yeah, there's so many variables that are outside of your control, that the things that you can control become really important and valuable, because it can make or break the day, basically the instructional time. and and it can help the kids, I think, to realize that, there are a lot of unexpected things that happen in life. And so we have to just, kind of go from one thing to the next thing and just work with it and do the best that we can. So it's not always going to be perfect as we planned it to be, but we can still have a good experience.
That's something I want to, just as a side note, I feel like there's a stigma that if you are homeschooling your kids, they're not going to get those soft skills that are supposedly taught in traditional school. But I've already heard so many variations of how you guys are teaching those soft skills in homeschool. Like for instance, you have the co-op, so they're getting lots of social interaction. They are doing extracurriculars with other children throughout the week. And then they're also, just with their own siblings, learning how to be flexible and accommodating and cooperative with them in order to get their academics done. And so in a really real sense, I feel like it's a very tailored like small group instruction. It's like a richer type of instruction of those soft skills. And I don't think people think that whenever they think homeschooling.
Right. Right.
Something that I've been working in my brain is that I think this homeschooling experience on the crisis side has been, in a way, rightfully so perceived as such a detriment. But I think that the reason it's perceived as a detriment is because, parents have been thrown into it and they're trying to be the teacher. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, but they're forgetting that they're the parent still, and the parent role has so many advantages. And I'm starting to think, why can't we just meld these together and have the parent still play that parent role, but you're just bringing in those educational materials that the teacher at school is responsible for giving you.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. And that's sort of what we do now. In the past, I have planned everything, like planned all of my own lessons and put different curriculum together to make things. But right now I'm more like a facilitator right now. So the
Mhm.
curriculum is there and they have their teachers for different subjects and I'm just facilitating that for them. But yeah, I think that um, it's a great opportunity for parents to realize that the power that they have in their child's life and to help the child to realize the importance of education and to show for the parents to show their children that it's a priority. So by them, having to pull those resources together for their children and kind of have a space for them to learn and to focus on their education, I think that that's a great opportunity for the child to say, hey, look, my mom is really, paying attention to this and she thinks that this is important. So I should think this is important too. And, we've had a lot of conversations here, just me between my children of, the investment that we put into it. So it's almost like we're working as a team to
Mhm.
get this done. And my part of it and my husband's part of it is to invest the money in the curriculum and to invest the time in planning it. And their investment is to do their best to, focus as much as they can and to learn as much as they can while they're in this season of life, because at some point they're going to be adults and, the relationship between parent and child is going to change. So we have this small amount of time, really, when you think about it, to train our children and to instill those values and skills in them that we want them to have as parents and well, not necessarily as parents, but as adults. Um, and I think part of this whole crisis homeschooling thing is good for parents and children too, because um, I always try to think about how do I want my children to react as adults.
Yeah.
So at some point, they're going to be in a situation. I hope that there's not another situation like this, with a virus that's, going throughout, spreading throughout the entire world. But I'm sure they will have their own major life events that are going to be hard for them to navigate through. And so modeling behavior for them that is flexible and what's the word I'm looking for? Flexible and just having a positive outlook at it and saying, okay, well, we're in this situation, not really where we want to be. We would much rather be still at co-op or at robotics or doing taekwondo or with our friends or whatever, but let's make the best of it and let's use the time wisely. I think that really teaches them more than like 2+2 is 4, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that it's a great opportunity for parents to realize that you're teaching your children a lot just by modeling behavior for them during this time that will help them when they become adults.
Yeah, that's such a really great point. And I love the fact that it's getting at, what's going to be the long-term lesson from
Mm-hmm.
this relatively brief period of time. I mean,
Right.
it feels so long while we're in it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's relatively brief. Our children are clearly going to remember it. This is going to be a moment in their lives that they remember and hold on to. And it is hard. I hope you can't hear my cats right now.
I can't. Your
Oh my
cats are louder than my kids right now. I'm just letting you
God.
know.
um, but I love the fact that you're kind of honing in on we can't control these day-to-day little things that we used to do in normal life. So if we can't make it through a worksheet, we can't make it through a worksheet, that's fine. But the
Yes.
value might be that we're still attempting to do some learning activities or
Yes.
because we value learning. Yeah,
Right, exactly, because it's important. We're going to try.
right.
And I think I'm glad that you said that about just trying to get through a worksheet because we're not out of the house as much and getting those breaks. I've noticed that the kids need me to be a little more flexible in the way that they're doing things because they're getting bored. They're just getting bored of doing, the same thing every day. And so, just for example, not having to cut and paste something. Like my 8-year-old the other day was just like, oh, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to cut and paste. Okay, so he doesn't necessarily need to cut and paste if he can just fill in the answers by writing it down. Okay,
Okay.
so being flexible in that, just letting him have that choice, um, but he's still doing the work, right? Because I need him to learn it. I need him to understand the concept, but he doesn't necessarily have to do it exactly the way that it's supposed to be done.
Mhm.
And then also, I think allowing them to take breaks on their own. One thing that's been really helpful for my 6th grader over the years, this is something we've had to do for years, is to have break cards. So you can even just write it down on an index sheet of paper that says 15-minute break or whatever. And if I'm busy helping somebody else or I'm doing something or I'm on the phone or whatever, he can come and set that card down in front of me and I know he needs a break. And I don't have to, if I look up and don't see him sitting at the computer doing his work, I'm not thinking that he's just being disobedient and just not, he's just given up. So just allowing them to, and that helps with self-regulation, right? For him to say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not paying attention to this anymore. I'm not going to do very well on this. I just need to take a break, whatever I need to do, I need to do. So
I
allowing them to
love
have.
that. Love that so much. I hope that I just want to really emphasize for parents that one intervention right there is amazing and could probably do wonders for so many parents out there.
Right, and not all of my kids need that. He definitely did. And just to say, okay, you can have this break, but after the break, you've got to come back and we've got to get this done. This is expected. I do expect you to finish this, but you can take a break. So there's lots of different things that you can do, even getting them to answer stuff to you out loud. Like if it's a study guide or a worksheet, you can read it out loud to them. Even if you're sitting down at dinner and you haven't had it's just been a long day, you can pull out that study guide and read it out loud. And that might be a great dinner conversation for everybody who's around the table.
Yeah.
So there are lots of different things that you can do to get the learning done without having to do it exactly the way it's supposed to be done.
I like that flexibility with, you know, the schools
Mm-hmm.
are not in a position where they can be super individualized right now. We
Right.
kind of have this sub crisis within special education because it's so hard to give special education services. But on
Yeah.
top of that, you have the children in regular education who are still getting differentiated instruction. And it's so hard for schools to give that whenever they're just trying to get material to the homes. And so I
Right.
think parents just hearing the permission, right? Like not that you have the authority to give the permission, but I think the fact that I think you're really hitting on like what's the point of education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes whenever you're getting these assignments home from the school, you have to give yourself some grace and self-compassion and say,
Absolutely.
let's just do the point of the assignment. And that might mean discussing the worksheet and not me also having my child write in the answers whenever I know that their fine motor skills are really difficult for them, their letter formation is really difficult for them. Like,
Right.
let's just get through the content,
Mm-hmm.
however that might be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then being able to count things like, for example, and I just know this because I have some family members who have sent me the, what's the word I'm looking for? The, schedule that the school has sent out, but it's not, it's not, you have to follow the schedule. It's just a recommended schedule.
Mhm.
But if you've got 15 minutes of handwriting and you've got a science assignment in which the child has to write, those two can be combined, right? Just make sure that they're doing a great job on their handwriting on the science worksheet. And if it looks, like it's supposed to, then that's handwriting. So, I think sometimes people think you have to break up everything into, okay, now we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And if we don't do all of these things, then I haven't been a good parent, or I haven't, done the things that my child is going to need, and they're going to fall behind, and, everything terrible is going to happen. But that's not necessarily true. You can kind of combine those things. One more thing that I would add to that is to be flexible on like the subjects. For example, social studies and science. Maybe do 2 days of social studies in one day, and then do 2 days of science in one day. If you can, depending on what the activity is. But I've noticed that my kids sometimes do better if we just sit with one subject for a longer period of time, as opposed to switching gears from one subject to the next. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to just combine those things to make it easier for everyone, especially if you're having to pull out a lot of materials, for one subject. Just make it easy for you, and make it something that is not going to be frustrating, so that it can be more of a positive experience for everybody.
For sure. Now, you've kind of hit on something a couple of times in our conversation, and you said something a second ago that really helped me pull it out, and that was that sometimes a parent might have the thought, oh, this makes me a terrible parent.
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned something earlier in the recording where you said, and to be fair, we've talked about this before, where you said that, with your teacher training, you were taught to create these elaborate lesson plans. And I used to be a teacher as well. I was taught to do that too. And so it's painstaking, because in your head, you know what you want to get done. And sometimes the lesson plan feels like it's just proof for somebody else.
Right.
At least that's how it always felt for me.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, I know you have gone towards a different route. And I'm wondering if those two concepts go together, and as far as like how you're perceiving you're doing as a parent, and that kind of effort you're putting into that planning piece, or like the parent responsibility piece. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is hard to square those things away, because with a lesson plan, it really takes out the concept that a child is a human being sometimes and not a robot. So they have all of these different personalities. Even I just have 4 kids, right? I don't have a classroom of 20. Just 4 at home. I'm not teaching 20. I'm just teaching 4 at home. But those 4 kids are so different, and they each have their own personalities and their own temperaments and their own learning difficulties, and their strengths and weaknesses. And so I learned a really long time ago that I'm not going to be able to control all of that. I need to try to be flexible in my approach, as I was saying, for each one of them, in order to get learning done. And at the end of the day, my children don't hate me, right? And we still have a good relationship with each other. And, we have a family unit that has some peace, and we're not just fighting with each other to get spelling done.
I love it. I love that so much, because I feel like even that little point right there, there's so much stress. And I'm noticing with the families I work with, the parents, many of these parents are, their job isn't to homeschool their children. They have other jobs.
Right.
And so they're actually, this is now a second job for them. And they're under so much stress, just trying to balance everything together. And I think that level of stress is leading their children, exactly what you just mentioned. It's leading their children to be a little bit more clingy, to have a lot more anxiety. Just their general behavior patterns are changing, which then just kind of does a feedback loop to the parents, and it increases the stress on the parents even more. And so just realizing that, again, this is a brief period of time in your children's lives, and what you want them to remember from this is maybe a value about coping and being flexible in hard times. It's probably not going to be, did I get a worksheet done correctly and on time to send back to my teacher?
Absolutely. I think that the teachers are probably going to be pretty understanding of that too. And a lot of the teachers have their own children as well, that they're preparing stuff for their classroom, and they're also trying to teach their children as well, and run their household. So working from home and doing this is definitely an added stressor. And I've never had to do that before. The only small instance of that is just when I was teaching co-op classes, and there was some time there that I had to prepare those classes, and compartmentalizing your time is really important, and saying, okay, this block of time is when I'm going to work on co-op classes or work or whatever, and then explaining to your children that, this is the time I have to do this, and having something for them to do, even if it is watching a TV show. It's not going to kill them to watch TV, right? Or just playing some online games that are even some educational games or apps or whatever. There are so many things that are being offered for free right now. I don't know if I can list those off or endorse those in any way, but I would just say
I would love to know the ones that you do. Yeah.
Okay, so right now we're doing the Reading Eggs free trial. There's a free trial going on with Reading Eggs. There's a free trial going for homeschool families and for teachers. It's books instead of books. It's books with a B. So they like animate the book.
Guys.
B, sorry.
I don't know if they'll understand Alabama or not.
With a B. But it animates the stories, and then it reads them out loud to them.
Oh, cool.
So we have an app called Teach Your Monster to Read, which the kids love. They offer that one free every now and again, and it's very cheap to download that app. We've got the Times Tales app. Let's see what else.
Is that multiplication, Times Tales?
It is, and it's done to like a story, and the numbers are characters. So if you have right brain kids, it's pretty good for them. So that's kind of interesting. And then education.com, I really like a lot. You can print out worksheets and workbooks from education.com, but they also have games, video games, and they're all learning games. You can search for them by subject, or you can search for them by grade level. You can even put in assignments for them to do. So I think that's all of the ones that we have now, but even just having those things available for them to do, and if they do at a grade level below or something like that, it's totally fine, right? It's better than
practice
other things that they could be doing.
Can we pause there? I think that was really important what you just said, that your kid might be learning a skill and they don't have mastery of it, which means that they're not independent, right? So if you gave them one of these games at their grade level, they still might be kind of coming at you, and you're not going to be able to get your work done. But what Stephanie just said was give them the grade level below. Yeah, and that's totally fine, because that's building their fluency.
Exactly. Yes, definitely do that. Give them the grade level below. You don't have to tell them that, because sometimes they'll be very offended by that, but it's super helpful, and it's good for you, because like you're saying, then you can get your other things done. So take advantage of that.
Oh my gosh, you are just filled with gold. This is so good. Amazing. Do you have any other little tips for us?
Some of the things that I would use to motivate them were things that we could do leaving the house, but we can't really do those things now. Okay. I did motivate my 6th grader last week to study for his tests by telling him that if I read the study guide out loud to him and all the questions that he got correct, he could stay up for 5 minutes past his bedtime on the weekend. And he got them all right. So then I had to cap it off at an hour. So I was like, you can't stay up past an hour, but if you get all these right, then that'll be an extra 5 minutes for each one. So he was super motivated to study that and to remember that. Whereas before, I could send him to his room and he would sit there for 30 minutes and come back and act like he had never even seen this stuff before. So
Yeah.
that was one of the motivators that I had.
I will say choice is an excellent motivator. It doesn't cost anything and you don't have to go anywhere. Sometimes I will recommend to parents, giving a kid a choice, like you can go to bed at 8:01 or you can go to bed at 8:07. And for young children, they don't have a clue.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
It's forever for them.
Yeah. Just give them the choice.
That's so true. That is so true. Just to be able to say, here, you can choose. So, yeah.
It makes them feel empowered and they'll now do what you need them to do because they got to choose.
Right.
But yeah.
Definitely.
Great reinforcer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, well, cool. So Stephanie, I really, really appreciate you kind of going through all of these changes. And I just really appreciate you too sharing how it's different for homeschool parents, because I hadn't thought of it being different for homeschool parents. And I think a big reason is that, I'm much more familiar with public school than homeschool. Even though interestingly enough, I do work with a lot of homeschool families, but just kind of diving into their day. And I think the reason why I don't know what you specifically do in a huge amount of detail is because every homeschool family is so different.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah. So, and I feel like, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a wide range of homeschooling families and moms. There are some moms that plan a lot, and then there are some moms that are just fly by the seat of their pants, and it just works, for them with their style. So that's, I guess, another thing that you could say, you don't have to change who you are in order to teach your children at home. Be yourself, do things the way that you normally would. Don't think that now you got to come out with a checklist if you're not a checklist mom, because some people aren't, and that's okay. So just remember that as you go forward.
Yeah, I love that. I love how, the big theme I feel like of this conversation is that you're in this new, for these parents who are in crisis homeschooling, you're in this new situation and and you're making it really fit the personalities of yourself and your children, because that will be what your children take away in their values as they grow up. It's never going to be the very individual learning skills that they encountered across these few months. So
definitely, yeah. And you can't replace the teacher. You can't replace the classroom, because you are at home and you're not the teacher. So you just want to do the best that you can, and to, like I said, just make sure that there's a focus on the learning and that the child sees that as a priority, and that you are all hanging in there together as a unit. And I think that would be very helpful to the child to see that.
Yeah. You are just such a pro. I just love this so much. Thank you so much.
Well, I enjoyed it, and I really feel honored that you asked me to do it. So.
Of course I did. I respect your homeschool process. To me, is just amazing.
Well,
I find it phenomenal.
I feel very normal. There are so many homeschool moms that are head and shoulders above me, so I feel really average in that regard. But I appreciate the opportunity, and it was really good to see you.
I know, right? It's been forever. It's been forever. I will come home at some point.
Okay, just let us know, as always.
Okay. I know. Okay, well, thank you, Stephanie, and everybody out there. I hope that you enjoyed this learning video. I hope that you got some good tips that might be helpful for you in these next few months. And I will list these out on the write-up that goes along with the video so that you can find them there as well. And join us next time for the next learning video. You can sign up for these learning videos by going to enildaclinic.com and getting on the email list. I just added a really special surprise that you get whenever you sign up for the email list. It's like a little bonus learning packet whenever you sign up there, so be sure to do that. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Bye.